Tell me more
Right.
about why we shouldn't be focused on it being a business activity and something else.
Yeah. So, I think because it's just not personal, right? So if you think of just a hierarchy of a human, right, and what they care about, and some companies won't like me for saying this, is like there's the corporate cookbook, right? Or like, hey, like here's how many, I don't know, here's your quota, right? Imagine that's what drives like the waterfall of a cookbook, right? From like doing a deal down to, okay, what kind of behavior do we need to do to eventually get to a deal and all the math in between, right? Like the conversions. So there's that, which is important, and like I mean, people care about their jobs. Don't get me wrong. And then down a layer, more important, like income. So like sometimes we'll see income cookbooks, right? Which is like, hey, I want to make I don't know $100,000,
Mhm.
and how do I go out and do that based on my commissions and what do I need to do each day to get to that income, right? Which is closely or more closely associated to someone's personal goals, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and I think good leaders would help people figure out what their personal goals are and how they link back to their income, especially if we're dealing with sellers. And then another layer down is personal stuff. Okay, so income's personal, but how about things like just general human improvement, things we want to do every day that we get a buzz out of, right? Like, I don't know, exercising or journaling or reading, right? Like those are all things we read about in books that we should do, but we don't always do. Okay, and they breed long-term human improvement, right? Okay, versus I don't know, like the person who doesn't have a cookbook, they probably death scroll, right? For too
Yeah.
many hours of the day. You know what I'm saying, right?
Mhm.
And don't get me wrong, I scroll sometimes, but I also make sure I hit my journal, I hit my exercise, I hit my reading, or even things like investing or paying down debt, whatever someone's financial situation is, right? So I think that's another layer down, right, into the personal world of I want a recipe to succeed, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I think about when it comes to like business versus personal stuff and getting layers down into the cookbook, um, which can breed, I think, better habits, right?
Yeah. So is it more of like making it more personal to somebody or like helping them find like an intrinsic motivation so that it becomes really easy to perform on?
Um, Sorry, repeat that question one more time.
Is it like the goal here with like reframing it, is it make it personal or more intrinsic versus like, like saying, all right, here my external motivator is
Mhm.
I want to, please the corporate, cookbook idea
Mhm.
versus like my internal motivator would be this is something that I actually care about internally or just, hey, this is more just personal for me. And that's what
Yeah.
the important
Yeah.
part is.
Yeah, I think it should be two, right? So again, it's not that a personal cookbook should just have all personal stuff in it. I think
Yeah.
what I'm suggesting is that, at least in my experience, having struggled with, I've been doing this for about 15 years with Sandler, so call it like I can't exactly remember, but call it like by year 7 of having a cookbook and like being in and out of the cookbook, right? Like starting over again. Oh, like or I don't know, like I've got a pipeline problem, right? And oh, better do my cookbook again, right? That's
Yeah.
sort of like I think the wave that we see with most clients, and I'll put myself into that mix.
Mhm.
And then realizing like, okay, like the even the income thing or the corporate thing isn't breeding discipline, so I need something more intrinsic, if I use your language.
Yeah.
The intrinsic part is like the part that I really care about that I want to get done. Okay. And that gets me into, the cookbook. Imagine like opening up the cookbook. So like I've got some intrinsic things like journaling or, investing, right? Once a week. That gets me into the cookbook early in the day. And
Yeah.
then what I get when I get in there early in the day is I get all the reminders about other things that are
Yeah.
important. So it breeds the discipline. Like the term I've heard before from a colleague of mine, and there's some psychology written about this, is habit stacking. Okay. Have you heard of habit stacking?
Offhand, but tell
Okay.
me about it. Yeah.
So it's like the simplest analogy I can give around habit stacking is most of us, we've spent our lives brushing our teeth, right?
Mhm.
Okay. But most of us, well, I guess myself, I struggle with flossing. Okay.
Right there
So
with
there you go. Right. So
you.
like, so the idea is if I brush my teeth every day and I know I'm going to do that, and I want to add another habit, I
Mhm.
just make sure the flossing or like the, I don't know, the multivitamin, whatever it is for the person is next to me brushing my teeth, right? Because I know I'm going to brush my teeth. So
Yeah.
if I brush my teeth and I got and my multivitamin is right next to it, I've got a better chance of taking the multivitamin and eventually breeding another habit. So it's, you stack a habit on top of another, right? Same idea with the cookbook. Okay,
Mhm.
if I know that I've got a passion about, journaling early in the morning, if that's part of my cadence, and I believe that will help me improve as a person, which I care deeply about.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my habit. That's my passion. It gets me into the cookbook where I'm passionate, but I'm less passionate about building my business. And it reminds me about all the behaviors I've got to do. And then I, start hitting on the behaviors. I fulfill the cookbook and I win my day, right? Whether it's, closing a deal or just getting some prospecting done or calling on existing accounts where I've got good relationships, all those things that we should be doing every day. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think I wasn't following it early on, but basically what you're saying is, hey, integrate the activities to grow your business, to be successful with your personal life activities. It makes it easier to do. So one of the things that I try to stay disciplined on is like working out. And I have a home gym, and
Mhm.
I find myself very, very busy all the time. But like around midday, I'll just be like, all right, I'm gonna like send an email and then go do a rep, and then I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna fix this issue, and then I'm gonna go do a rep, and then I'm gonna and like it becomes like this overlapping instance of I'm kind of making my cold calls and I'm working out at the same time, and it's intertwined. And it's kind of a nice way to be able to like hey, make it all happen. And from what I'm understanding from your perspective is, hey, just instead of separating these two things, integrate them, get your easy wins or your more personable wins in, and then combine those. Um, I like that as like
Yeah.
as an easy way to like start the ramp up period instead of like sitting there cold and looking at something and be like, I don't feel like doing it. It's like, no, I'm already doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So yeah, exactly. I'm already in the recipe. I'm already in the ingredients of the cookbook.
Yeah.
So, and I've got other things to do again that I may be less passionate. But by the way, I should share. I think uh, I'm thinking of clients as well as, being a bit self-serving, which is that's been my experience. But others, what they probably need in their cookbook is their daily cookbook, right? Is they need to add some personal stuff. They get a passion about business, like that's just how they're wired, right? Okay, and that's what gets them in. Meanwhile, though, like you hear things like burnout and stuff like that. I think that's also a place where we can become more agile with our life. So if I get my business cookbook completed, am I on my way to burnout or do I still take care of myself, right? And again, I'll use the examples I shared earlier. Like, am I reading a little bit? Am I journaling a little bit? Am I exercising or getting a breath of fresh air now that the weather's a bit warmer, depending on where people live, right? Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, so with the habit stacking, what have you seen as like effective strategies to like really pair the habits correctly or like
Mhm.
start that process of understanding
Yeah.
how the
Yeah.
habits stack?
Yeah, well, I think it starts with a process of understanding what you want, right? And we'll be generic here, call that goal setting, right? I
Yeah.
think a lot of people have goals between their ears, but they've not gone through like that formula, of really figuring out what you want. Like if you can see it over what is it, my left shoulder here, okay? There's the vision board. That's where annually we put together our ideas, we get visual with them, and that becomes like highly congruent with things that go into our cookbook, right? It's like that staircase, right? Like you want something cool, but what are the stairs or the steps to get there, right? And those initial steps are like the behavioral cookbook, if you know what I'm saying, right? So I
Mhm.
think first off, it's got to be, people need to understand themselves, and that can take time and effort. Second is identifying, yes, the behaviors that are gonna take us up that staircase towards the goals we want, right? And then thirdly, of course, it's activating them and figuring out like over time, I think what we're actually passionate about, what we care about, right? Which is often the habits we're willing to partake in. but like making a cold call, sometimes we're not willing or we're less willing to partake in that. Okay, so it's like, what am I willing to do? And then what am I less willing to do? And do they live in the same template or recipe, if you would? And that's, I think, what I've seen as effective.
Yeah. I mean, not to get too meta, but like, could if somebody is trying to trying to figure out how to habit stack,
Hmm.
maybe part of the cookbook would be, well, let me spend time figuring out how to do this, and that could then eventually evolve to the point where you go, all right, I'm going to spend time each day. I'm going to do my activities to figure out how I'm going to, put together the cookbook. And then as it starts coming together, I start eliminating the necessity of starting the journey.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think we got to be careful with this topic as well because sometimes when we start that journey and we try to figure out the habit too quickly, sometimes we'll falter, right? So we shouldn't be hard on ourselves. Again, I'll go back to what I said earlier. You know, you think I'd be able to figure it out in 7 years, but I was in and out of the cookbook and in and out of discipline. And, I would need like painful moments to re-engage in the discipline until I'd say, yeah, but the last 8 years, highly consistent. Okay. If I'm honest, where I fall out of my cookbook a little bit is coming up because again, I'm in Toronto. And yeah, we're into our warm weather season.
Yeah.
So sometimes it can slip a little bit, especially if I've got, a couple of weeks off, right? I'll tend to slip even out of my personal cookbook items, right? Which I mentioned earlier, like journaling, exercising, reading. Like I'll still do some of that, but I'll forget to track it, right?
Hmm.
Okay. And then sometimes that can have an impact on my business cookbook because when I stop tracking my personal stuff, guess what? I stop tracking my business stuff. Okay. And that can be like the slippery slope where I stop understanding my business or, gaps in my efforts. Right. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So this is a good reminder for me. I shouldn't slip this summer period. Right. So, appreciate you.
Yeah. You gotta give yourself some grace, right?
Yeah.
I guess so, is one thing to say like it's all about consistency. Like that's the easy part to say that. And then
Mhm.
there's the follow through.
Yeah.
And like you said that you had like that moment of like, the 7 year mark to 8 year mark, all of a sudden it seems like it switched. Like what was the
Mhm.
change there? What was the catalyst? How
Yeah.
did you create the actual output instead of just the effort for it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess probably a little bit of experience with, trying to do it. So call that some chemistry and not getting the right outcome.
Hmm.
So changing and getting those personal areas in there and just saying, okay, like, what do I really want to track? What do I really want? And,
Yeah.
this is going to sound like very like high level, but I just want to feel good. Okay. That was like basically what I wanted. I just wanted to feel good, feel energized. Um, yeah, like just be happy. Okay. And again, that's super high level, isn't it? But that's where like, the basics of life, like exercising, feeding yourself properly, reading, journaling came in. But the other piece, the other I'd say like um point of where like I hinged into being more disciplined was I was just fed up with not being disciplined.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, cookbooking and tracking and paying attention to what you do to make sure you're doing the right things when you're doing them, like being intentional with your day. That
Hmm.
sounds great. Okay. But the evidence was I was not doing it, which was creating choppiness. And I just, at some point, I just got fed up. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do this. I got to figure it out. But I want to get a bit of, dopamine buzz when I do it. And that's where the personal stuff came in, right?
Okay, so that's where this is like recommendation came from is, hey, what if like combine these two things, the personal and the business,
Yeah.
then you started combining it, and then that's when it became sticky. And then prior you hadn't done that. Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes.
All
Yes.
right. Sorry.
Exactly. Yeah.
If
No,
that
it's
was what I was
okay.
supposed to pick up early on, I'm being a
No,
little
that's my
this
fault.
morning. Yeah.
My fault. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
No,
think that's
no.
the journey, most
Yeah.
clients go on, right? Is they look at the Sandler cookbook and it's like, bing, it's a business thing, right? It's a corporate thing. It's a micromanagement thing, even sometimes, right? People think of it that way. And that's a good place to start. Like we all need to go through our journey.
Yeah.
Um, but I'd say if you can, cut the journey short and like get into the cookbook, I think having personal stuff in there that people are again innately passionate for is really a good thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, I think, what's interesting about like finding the reward and like the business side of the cookbook. Um, as humans, we're kind of wired to not really be able to fully understand like long-term effects. Like we all understand that it's supposed to be important, but it's not intuitive to have it. And anything that goes into like, hey, here's the habits that I'm going to establish for growing my business,
Mhm.
you're going to see those in like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, like a year later. And so while you're working through something, you're like, all right, is this going to work for me? You gotta wait so long
Yeah.
and pick up the phone and make the email and do like the diligent thing that's just like not the fun, sexy stuff. And you're gonna have to wait for a long time to be able to see, hey, is this actually paying off? What are the repercussions? Like, oh, like the pipeline I see today is from 6 months ago. The pipeline I'll see in 6 months is from today. And
Hmm.
it's one of those things where it's like that's kind of hard, as a human, just to like really wrap your head around at times.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. You want me to comment on that?
Please.
I think yeah, the results is what you're talking about can be
Yeah.
further out, right? Depending on, and we're getting into sales now, like a cycle. But even like human improvement, like think about it. Like, if you want a bigger bicep, you can't just do 3 reps and get a big bicep. It's no different, right? But I think the buzz that you get or don't get, at the end of each day is when you do the discipline and you fuel the math, like whether it's making call attempts into a new client or making call attempts into existing clients, depending on your role, or again, doing three curls like biceps
Yeah.
curls. At the end of the day, the human, when they have a cookbook and they've got their math, one of two things happen. They either know they did it, and that gives us a buzz because we did the tough stuff. We know it. And that's the daily buzz you get, right? Which feels great. Now, on the other side of the equation, we either know our math and we don't do it, and
Hmm.
we know we didn't do it. And that can hurt. Okay. That can kind of like suck us dry. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, and leave us not feeling great because we know we didn't do it. Okay, between the years. And usually, how does that reflect? It reflects in, how we behave and are we happy or not so happy versus when we do it, even if we don't get, that result right away,
Yeah.
we're only going to get in 6 months, we're on our way and we know it. Okay. Like I think of, again, I'll go back to my first year in this business when I had $0 in revenue. And I did for a while, by the way. It was a tough start. And I was in my life, I had at the time, 3 kids at home and like, a home to pay for, and I'd left a corporate job, all that kind of stuff. Um, and I remember coming home from the office some days where I didn't do it,
Hmm.
and I knew it. And I wasn't the best person I should be at home those evenings, right? Around like people I deeply care about. But the days I did do it, didn't matter what happened, I'd come home and family members like they knew I did my stuff that day. In fact, like here's a super secret. I remember early days in doing like especially like the cold prospecting cookbook that we had to do to build up the business.
Hmm.
My son Ryan, he's 21 now, so but this is about 15 years ago. So he was a little guy. He was really my accountability partner. So he would check in with me at the end of each day
Yeah.
and ask me if I did my prospecting behavior, which is primarily what we had to do back then. And we had a little thermometer, okay,
Hmm.
and he would get to color in if I did my behavior based on the number of attempts I had to make and the number of conversations I was supposed to have. So yeah, I guess call it child labor, but he was helpful at the time. He was a good accountability partner. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's an okay use of child labor. I
Yeah.
grew up on a
Yeah.
farm. We
Yeah.
had to do a bunch of farm activity, which
Yeah.
still hold like near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think it was
Yeah.
a lot more effort than, coloring in a thermometer.
Yeah, he was just coloring in. So,
Yeah.
and eventually, I mean, we're still doing what we're doing. And, bluntly, like speaking
Yeah.
of personal stuff, we've gotten to do some cool stuff with our kids because of all of those initial efforts, right?
Hmm.
So, yeah, sometimes you just got to be patient and again, get the buzz from doing the behavior. That's the gift, right? You know, you won your day when you do the behavior, when you do the tough stuff. You know, you kind of lost your day when you don't. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, of all the positions that you can have within an organization from a business perspective, to me, sales is the most emotional. And then to try to carve out an emotional place here and then carve out a different one in your home and then
mhm,
not be like, oh, these things are completely separate. It's like, that's nah.
mhm.
They're
Yeah,
going to be totally entwined. They're going to be both emotional spaces. Do the things, what I'm picking up from you is, do the things in your work life to make sure that your emotions are strong and feel good when you go then take it home to your home life. And if that's what's going to be like the interplay between those two things, then why would you separate them? Is,
yeah,
bring the home, the emotional part of the home and the emotional part of the work into a single idea, make it very like intentional so that then you can really think through how that's going to like, build the momentum in both areas.
yeah,
It's interesting. I would have never thought of it from this perspective of, I got my cookbook. I'm like, all right, my cookbook is call, email, LinkedIn. And it's like that's one way to do it. And
yeah.
then and then there's like a much more holistic perspective to then have it bring it all together.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, like I said earlier, Austin, like, different styles, right? I mean,
Yeah.
for some, like, what you described, which is like, call, meeting, close, whatever, right? I mean, that works for them. Like they're in. They want that math and they want to fuel it. Like that's just what motivates them at that period in their life. For others, maybe to do the tough business stuff, you need again some help from some of the personal passions. That was just my experience, right? So
Yeah.
and there's plenty of people out there in the world who are of my style. If you think of just people stylistically and how
Hmm.
they think and what motivates them, so it'd be applicable to a good chunk of the population.
Yeah. If we were gonna assign it to like a disc personality,
Hmm.
do you
Yeah,
think that there's like hey, if you're a D, then you're probably gonna want to separate the thing and just pick math. And then
probably.
if you're IS, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right in that quadrant, right? If we think of like, the more bottom line styles are the dominants, the reds, the Ds, the Cs, okay? Although they like chemistry, right, and math. So they're more like just, yeah, a bit more calculated and bottom line, if you would, right? And then, yeah, the Is and the S's, they might need a bit of the more like, intuitive, emotion-based stuff to help them, remind them about the chemistry, the math, and to get it done, right? Yeah. So I think you're spot on there.
Nice. Cool. All right. We had our upfront contract to have this meeting for 30 minutes. We're at the 30-minute mark. I hope you don't mind, but would you spend like the next 30 seconds, a minute, what's the one big takeaway you want people to have from listening in?
Yeah, good question. Um, I think that everyone has had a cookbook, and I don't mean like a recipe cookbook.
Yeah.
Everyone at some point in their life, especially because it's probably adults listening to this, um, has had some sort of like cookbook,
Hmm.
okay, where they had to put ingredients into something to achieve an excellent outcome, right? Whether that's I don't know, you train for a triathlon and like you knew what the training inputs needed to be, you tracked them, and then you hit your time goal or some other version. That's just one example. We've all had one, okay? And for people struggling with the sales cookbook, I want them to think back to that time they did have a cookbook and why did they lean in? Why did they lean in? Okay, why do they want the inputs? Why do they want to track it? Because they really ultimately just wanted the goal, right? And if they can think back to what fueled them to wanting to track and get there and do the tough stuff, I think sometimes that's where we find our motivational triggers that can help us build, keep track, and fuel a business or sales cookbook. So I think that would be the biggest takeaway.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I really appreciate this. You've given me a whole new perspective on cookbook and how to think about it. And I'm more of an IS, so
Yeah.
I'm probably the one that's this most relevant to. And it would never have occurred to me until you walked me through all this kind of stuff. And I really appreciate that insight.
Yeah, no, thanks, Austin. I've enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, man.